Welcome to a journey back in time, to an era defined by its rigid elegance, its whispered secrets, and a hauntingly beautiful obsession with perfection. Today, we're exploring the world of Victorian hygiene and beauty standards, a time when the pursuit of an ethereal, porcelain ideal led to rituals that were as dangerous as they were delicate. Over the course of this long-form story, divided into 10 continuous chapters, we will walk through the misty streets of London and into the private chambers of the 19th century. We'll uncover the truth behind toxic cosmetics, the engineering of the silhouette, and the silent, slow-moving morning rituals that governed life under the flicker of the gaslight. Before we begin our descent into the shadows of the past, if you find peace in these stories, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment below. It costs nothing at all, but it helps us immensely to keep bringing these historical moments to life for you. Now, find a comfortable place to rest. Let the modern world fade away, and join me as we step into the soft, grey light of a Victorian morning. The grey light of dawn filters through heavy velvet curtains, casting long and silent shadows across the floorboards of a room that smells faintly of beeswax, dried lavender, and the lingering chill of a dying hearth. It is a quiet hour, a time before the city truly stirs, and the world feels suspended in a soft, misty amber. You find yourself in the heart of the Victorian era, where the morning begins not with a sudden rush, but with a deliberate and rhythmic sequence of rituals. The air is cool, carrying the scent of coal smoke from 1,000 chimneys across London. But here, inside the sanctuary of the bedroom, there is a stillness that commands your attention. In the corner of the room stands the washstand, a centerpiece of daily life, and a silent witness to the era's complicated relationship with the body. It is often a fine piece of mahogany or walnut, topped with a slab of cold white marble that gleams like bone in the dim morning light. Upon this marble sits the porcelain basin and the large, heavy ewer or pitcher, decorated with delicate hand-painted motifs of pale blue cornflowers or trailing ivy. The weight of the pitcher is substantial as you reach for it. Its ceramic handle is cool to the touch, and as you tilt it, the sound of water pouring into the basin is the first true note of the day. It is a clear, resonant splash that echoes in the quiet room, a sound that signals the transition from the world of dreams to the world of duty. For the Victorian, the morning wash is more than a matter of hygiene. It is a moral imperative. There is an old, deeply held belief that pulses through the veins of this society. The idea that cleanliness is next to godliness. To be clean is to be virtuous. To be scrubbed is to be civilized. The act of washing is the first victory of the day over the perceived chaos and filth of the external world. The water in the basin is rarely warm, unless one is of great wealth, with a staff of servants to carry steaming kettles up 3 flights of stairs. The morning wash is a bracing, cold affair. The chill of the water against the skin is thought to tighten the nerves, to sharpen the mind, and to fortify the spirit against the temptations of the day. It is a physical manifestation of discipline. Beside the basin lies a small, rectangular cake of soap, perhaps a bar of pears, or a simple, unscented Castile. It sits in a matching porcelain dish, its surface worn smooth and translucent by previous mornings. As you rub the soap between your hands, it does not produce the thick, artificial foam of the modern world. Instead, it creates a thin, milky lather, smelling of rosemary or simple lye. The sensation is one of slick, quiet friction. You take a flannel cloth or a natural sea sponge, coarse and earthy, and begin the process of the sponge bath. In an era where full immersion in a tub is a rare and often monthly event, the sponge bath is the daily reality. It is a meticulous, part-by-part cleansing, starting with the face and moving down the neck, the shoulders and the arms. The touch of the wet cloth is a shock to the system, a sharp reminder of the body's boundaries. You feel the water trickling slowly, a single cold droplet tracing a path down your spine, making you shiver in the half-light. There is a deep, rhythmic quality to the movement. Dip, squeeze, scrub, rinse. The water in the basin slowly clouds, turning a pale, pearly grey as it lifts away the traces of the night. This is a private, solitary moment of self-regulation. There is no vanity here yet, only the functional maintenance of the vessel. The Victorian mind views the skin as a porous border that must be kept clear of effluvia, the waste products of the body that they believed could clog the pores and lead to both physical and moral decay. As you move the cloth over your skin, you notice the textures of the room around you. The rough weave of the linen towel hanging on the wooden rail, waiting to dry you. The faint creak of the floorboards as you shift your weight. The sight of your own reflection in the small, tilted vanity mirror. A face that looks back at you through a slight ripple in the antique glass, softened by the shadows. The drying process is as vigorous as the washing. The linen is thick and somewhat abrasive, designed to stimulate the circulation and bring a healthy, rosy glow to the cheeks. In the Victorian view, a faint flush of blood to the surface of the skin is a sign of vibrant health, a stark contrast to the stagnant, pale illness they so feared. You stand there for a moment, skin tingling from the cold water and the friction of the towel, feeling the silence of the house begin to break. Below, you can hear the faint, distant sounds of the household waking, the muffled thud of a coal scuttle, the clinking of a stove grate being cleared, the soft murmur of voices in the hallway. But in this room, the ritual continues. The washstand is now a landscape of damp porcelain and scattered droplets. You reach for a small bottle of rose water or a tin of simple tooth powder. The tooth powder, often a mix of chalk, charcoal, and perhaps a hint of camphor, feels gritty against the teeth, a sharp and medicinal taste that lingers on the tongue. There is a profound sense of order in these small acts. Each motion is a layer of armor being applied for the day ahead. The Victorian era is one of intense public scrutiny, and the foundation of one's public persona is built here, in the cold light of the morning, over a basin of water. The body is something to be managed, contained, and kept in a state of constant, quiet improvement. As the sun begins to climb higher, burning off the grey mist outside the window, the focus shifts from the mere removal of dirt to the more complex art of presentation. The skin is now clean, the pores are closed by the cold, and the canvas is ready. But as you look closer at that canvas in the mirror, you realize that for a Victorian, being clean is only the beginning. There is an ideal to be reached, a standard of beauty that transcends simple health. It is an aesthetic that prizes a specific kind of ethereal, almost ghostly grace, a look that speaks of refinement, of a life lived away from the harsh sun and the soot of the factories. The porcelain of the basin is a reflection of the porcelain desired for the face. This pursuit of the pale, the translucent, and the delicate will lead the men and women of this age down a path of strange tinctures and dangerous secrets, where the line between a beauty treatment and a slow-acting poison becomes dangerously thin. The morning wash has prepared the body, but the transformation into the Victorian ideal is a much more delicate and much more haunting endeavor. The light in the room shifts now, turning from a cold grey to a pale buttery gold, as the sun finally clears the rooftops. The shadows retreat into the corners, revealing the fine layers of dust dancing in the air. You can see the steam beginning to rise from the kitchen far below, a signal that the day has truly begun. You turn away from the washstand, leaving the damp cloth and the cooling water behind, and move toward the dressing table. Here, the tools of beauty are laid out in a precise, silent row. Silver-backed brushes, crystal jars of pomade, and small, mysterious vials of liquid. The quiet ritual of the wash is over, and the intricate, sometimes perilous dance with the Victorian mirror is about to begin. The air feels heavier now, expectant, as we prepare to look beneath the surface of the skin, into the shadows of the pale ideal that haunted the Victorian imagination. The world outside is now a cacophony of iron wheels on cobblestones and the cries of street vendors. But inside, the silence remains thick and scented. You sit before the glass, and as you pick up the first of the silver brushes, you begin to contemplate the face you wish to present to the world. A face that must look as though it has never known labor, never known heat, and never known the touch of the sun. This is the beginning of the transformation, the slow and careful construction of the Victorian mask. A mask that is as beautiful as it is fragile, and as captivating as it is deadly. In the soft light of the morning, the journey into the secrets of the vanity has only just started, drifting deeper into the quiet, obsessive pursuit of a beauty that was intended to last forever, even as it consumed those who sought it. As you gaze into the silver-framed mirror, the reflection that looks back at you is no longer a mere human face. It is a landscape of expectations, a canvas upon which the Victorian ideal must be meticulously drawn. The room remains quiet, but the air feels charged with the weight of 1,000 unspoken rules. To be a woman or a man of standing in this age is to participate in a silent, aesthetic theatre. And the first act of this performance is the pursuit of the porcelain mask. In the Victorian mind, the skin is the primary indicator of one's soul, one's class, and one's very constitution. To be tanned is to be tainted by the sun, a mark of the labourer, the field hand, or the street vendor, who has no choice but to toil beneath the open sky. For the elite, the skin must be as white as the marble of the washstand, as translucent as fine-bone china, and as untouched by the world as a fallen petal. This obsession with pallor is not merely a whim of fashion, it is a romanticization of fragility. We find ourselves in an era where consumption, what we now know as tuberculosis, is not just a devastating disease, but a tragic aesthetic. There is a strange, haunting allure to the consumptive look. The Victorian imagination is captivated by the image of the beautiful, dying youth. The paper-thin skin, the feverish flush upon the cheekbones, the unnaturally bright and dilated eyes. It is a look of ethereal transition, as if the person is already half-clothed in the mists of the afterlife. To mimic this, women go to extraordinary lengths to drain the vitality from their appearance. They seek a complexion that suggests they have never felt the rough brush of a breeze or the warmth of a summer afternoon. You reach for a small, crystal jar on the vanity. Its contents a fine, shimmering white powder. This is often bloom of youth or Laird's liquid pearl. As you unscrew the lid, a faint metallic scent drifts upward. For many, these powders are the secret to that coveted, ghostly glow. But the secret is a deadly one. Many of these preparations are laden with lead, bismuth, or even arsenic. As you apply the powder with a soft, swan's down puff, the sensation is cool and velvety, instantly blurring the natural textures of your skin. It settles into the fine lines, masking the pores, creating a surface that is unnaturally smooth. But beneath this mask, the lead begins its slow, silent work, seeping into the pores, gradually graying the very skin it seeks to whiten, and poisoning the system from the inside out. It is a Faustian bargain. Beauty in exchange for breath. The pursuit of the pale does not end with powders. You pick up a slender, blue-tinted pencil, sharpened to a fine point. In the dim gaslight, you lean closer to the mirror, tracing the faint, delicate lines of the veins across your temples and down the curve of your neck. If the skin is truly transparent, the Victorian logic goes, then the lifeblood beneath should be visible in thin, azure ribbons. By artificially enhancing these blue veins, you create the illusion of skin so thin and refined that it is almost non-existent. It is a meticulous, artistic process, a form of mapping the body to suggest a state of hybrid delicacy. You are painting yourself into a portrait of aristocratic frailty, a person who is too sensitive, too elevated for the mundane realities of physical health. And then there are the eyes. The eyes are the windows to the soul, and in the 1800s, those windows must be wide, dark, and shimmering, with a mysterious watery light. You reach for a small amber vial labeled Belladonna, the beautiful lady. Inside is the extract of the deadly nightshade plant. With a steady hand, you let a single drop fall into each eye. The sensation is immediate, a sharp, cold sting, followed by a dull, throbbing ache that seems to radiate from the very center of your skull. Within minutes, your pupils begin to expand, swallowing the iris until your eyes are two vast, dark pools that catch every flicker of the gaslight. This is the dewy look, the gaze of a person lost in a poetic trance. But the price of this dilated beauty is a world turned to a blur. Your vision becomes hazy, the edges of the room soften and dissolve, and the very mirror before you becomes a shimmering, distorted lake. Frequent use leads to blindness, a slow darkening of the world that many accept as the cost of a captivating gaze. The silence of the room is now punctuated by the slow, rhythmic beat of your own heart, which feels unusually heavy in the wake of the nightshade. You sit still, waiting for the blur to settle, for the mask to dry. Outside, the world is becoming louder, more industrial, more aggressive. But here, you are cultivating a state of nervous sensibility. This is the era of the vapors and the fainting spell, where a woman's physical weakness is seen as a sign of her moral and spiritual superiority. To be robust, to be energetic, to have a hearty appetite, these are seen as vulgar, almost animalistic traits. Instead, the Victorian ideal is one of listlessness. Some women go so far as to drink vinegar by the spoonful or eat tiny amounts of arsenic wafers, believing these substances will clear the blood and produce a more dramatic, sickly pallor. They are in essence practicing a form of controlled, aesthetic starvation. As the sun climbs higher, hitting the crystals on your dressing table and casting rainbows across the white powdered surface, you begin to see the tragedy of the porcelain mask. It is a beauty that requires the suppression of life. To maintain this look, one must move slowly, breathe shallowly, and avoid all manner of exertion. The Victorian lady becomes a living statue, a decorative object in her own home. Even the men are not entirely immune to this cult of the pale. The refined gentleman prizes a clear, smooth complexion that speaks of a life of the mind rather than a life of the hands. The dandy spends hours ensuring his skin is free of blemish and his hair is perfectly groomed, using the same logic of class and distinction to separate himself from the unwashed masses. The ritual of the pale ideal is a testament to the power of the mind over the body, a collective agreement to value the appearance of death over the reality of life. It is a slow, drifting dream of a world where nothing is raw, nothing is coarse, and everything is filtered through a layer of fine, toxic dust. As you sit there, your pupils wide and your skin a painted map of artificial veins, you realize that you have become a ghost in your own time. You are a spectre of the Victorian imagination, a being made of silk, lace, and lead. The morning has progressed, and the initial wash has been overwritten by this complex chemical transformation. The room is now filled with the faint, sickly sweet smell of the powders and the medicinal tang of the eye drops. The transition from the private self to the public icon is nearly complete, but the layers of artifice are about to become even more intricate. For beneath the pale skin and the dilated eyes, there are even deeper secrets hidden in the vanity. Secrets of color, of artifice, and of a natural beauty that is entirely manufactured in the shadows. The porcelain mask is set, the ghost is summoned, and as the house stirs into full wakefulness, we prepare to move from the skin itself to the hidden tinctures that will bring a false life to this pale Victorian canvas. The light through the velvet curtains is now a brilliant, dusty gold, illuminating the microscopic particles of powder that float in the air like tiny fallen stars. You stand up, your movements careful and deliberate, feeling the slight dizziness that comes with the belladonna. The floor beneath your feet feels distant, and the world is a soft, focused dream. You move toward the wardrobe, where the heavy fabrics of the era await to encase this fragile painted form. But your eyes linger one last time on the vanity. The ritual of the pale is done, and the long, slow day of the Victorian aesthetic has truly begun, drifting ever forward into the complex dance of the secret vanity that awaits in the flickering light. The mirror remains your only confidant in this hour, its silvered surface holding the secret of the transformation you have already begun. The room is now bathed in the full, warm glow of a Victorian morning, yet a certain shadow persists, a shadow born of the era's deep-seated hypocrisy. You sit back down on the velvet cushioned stool, the silk of your dressing gown rustling like a whisper against the wood. Your skin is now a pale porcelain canvas, the blue veins traced with artistic precision, and your eyes are dark, shimmering pools from the belladonna. But the face in the glass is a ghost, and a ghost, while ethereal, lacks the healthy vitality that the public eye demands. To solve this, you must turn to the secret vanity, the world of the invisible art. In this age, to be painted is to be a woman of low character, an actress, or a creature of the demimonde. Queen Victoria herself has declared makeup to be impolite, a vulgarity reserved for those who live beneath the bright, scandalous lights of the stage. And yet, every lady of standing knows that nature often needs a gentle, hidden hand to reach the heights of Victorian perfection. You reach toward the vanity, not to the obvious jars of pomade, but to a small, inconspicuous drawer hidden beneath a silk runner. It opens with a muted, wooden click, revealing a collection of vials and tins that have no labels, for their purpose is understood in silence. This is the alchemy of the Victorian boudoir, where beauty is manufactured in the shadows so that it may appear natural in the sun. You pick up a small, ornate mortar and pestle made of cool white marble. Beside it lies a small paper packet containing dried cochineal beetles, tiny shriveled husks imported from distant lands. As you begin to grind them, the sound is a rhythmic, gritty crunch that echoes in the stillness of the room. Slowly, the grey-black husks surrender their secret, turning into a powder of the most vivid, shocking crimson. This is carmine, the lifeblood of the Victorian rouge. You mix a tiny pinch of this powder with a dollop of cold cream or a bit of white wax, stirring it until it becomes a soft, rosy paste. The smell is earthy and slightly metallic. With the tip of your ring finger, You take the smallest amount of this crimson paste and tap it onto the apples of your cheeks. You must be careful, extraordinarily careful. The goal is not to look as though you're wearing color, but as though you have just returned from a brisk walk in the park, or have been struck by a sudden modest thought. You blend the color outward, using the heat of your skin to melt the wax until the red fades into a delicate, translucent pink, hovering just beneath the surface of the white powder you applied earlier. It is a natural flush, created by the deaths of 1,000 insects, a bloom of health that is entirely manufactured. You check the light from different angles, leaning left and then right, ensuring that no harsh line betrays your secret. In the Victorian world, the greatest sin is not the use of artifice, but the failure to hide it. Next, you turn your attention to your lips. A Victorian lady does not wear lipstick, but she may use a lip salve to protect her delicate skin from the biting London fog. You reach for a small tin of what is ostensibly a medicinal balm, but inside it is tinted with the same cochineal, or perhaps the juice of crushed beets. You apply it sparingly, biting your lips afterward to drive the color in, creating a bitten look that suggests a heart full of suppressed emotion rather than a face full of product. The taste is faint, a mix of wax and the slight bitterness of the dye. You blot the excess away with a scrap of fine linen until only a ghost of the color remains. You are constructing a persona of effortless, virginal beauty, a task that requires more effort than the world will ever be allowed to know. The eyes, already dilated and dark, now require a frame. You pick up a small, silver-handled candle and strike a match. The flame flares bright and orange, casting a sudden, dancing light across the vanity. You hold a small, flat piece of porcelain, perhaps a discarded saucer, above the flame, watching as the black soot, or lampblack, begins to collect on the underside. This is the Victorian mascara. You take a small, stiff brush, or a sliver of wood, and gather the warm, greasy soot. With a steady hand, you darken the tips of your lashes and the arch of your eyebrows. The smell of the smoke lingers in your nostrils, a sharp, industrial scent that contrasts with the floral perfumes of the room. You smudge the lines slightly with your fingertip, creating a soft, smoky shadow that makes the eyes appear even larger, even more recessed into the pale landscape of the face. It is the look of a woman who spends her nights in prayer or her days in deep, intellectual contemplation. As you work, you think of the ingredients that are not on your table today, but are whispered about in the ladies' journals. Some women, desperate for a more permanent glow, use Sears white lead or corrosive sublimate of mercury to wash their faces, hoping to peel away the freckles and blemishes of reality. They trade their health for a momentary perfection, unaware that the mercury is slowly eroding their bones and the lead is clouding their minds. Even the simple eyeshadows are often made of crushed lead or antimony. The Victorian vanity is a minefield of toxins, a place where the pursuit of the ideal is a slow act of self-destruction. You feel a slight shiver. Is it the cold water from the morning wash, the lingering effect of the belladonna, or the weight of the secrets you are literally applying to your skin? You look down at your hands, which are now dusted with white powder and stained with a faint rosy tint. The hands of a Victorian lady must be as perfect as her face, soft, white, and lily-like. You reach for a jar of almond paste, a thick, sweet-smelling concoction made of ground almonds, honey, and egg whites. You rub it into your skin, the texture gritty and then smooth, feeling the moisture soak into the pores. Some women wear gloves filled with this paste to bed, sleeping in a cocoon of sticky sweetness to ensure their hands never show the signs of age or the roughness of touch. The hand is the primary tool of social grace. To offer a hand in greeting is to offer a sign of one's entire history. It must be cool, dry, and impeccably pale. The sun is higher now, and the dust motes in the room are dancing more frantically in the beams of light. The transformation of the face is complete. You have moved from the raw, cold reality of the morning wash to the ghostly pallor of the porcelain ideal, and finally to this secret vanity where the spark of life has been artificially reintroduced. You look into the mirror and see a stranger, a masterpiece of Victorian engineering. The face is a mask of virtue, a portrait of a woman who is both fragile and formidable, a being who exists somewhere between the physical world and the world of romantic poetry. But as you stand and prepare to move to the next stage of your day, you realize that the face is only a small part of the whole. Your hair, long and heavy, remains loose and wild about your shoulders, a dark or golden mane that has not been truly washed in weeks. For the Victorian view of hair is as complex and ritualistic as their view of the skin. It is the crowning glory, a symbol of modesty and power, and its care is a laborious, rhythmic process that will take up the next hour of your morning. You feel the weight of it pulling at your scalp, a reminder of the sheer physical burden of being a Victorian ideal. You reach for the heavy, silver-backed brush, its bristles firm and expectant. The ritual of the skin is over. The secrets of the vanity are locked back in their hidden drawer, and the long, slow journey into the rituals of the hair is about to begin. The house is now fully awake. You can hear the rhythm of the city outside, the clip-clop of horses, the distant whistle of a steam engine. But here, in the sanctuary of the dressing table, time still moves with the slow, deliberate pace of a bygone age. You draw the brush through the first lock of hair, and as the static crackles in the quiet air, you prepare to lose yourself in the next chapter of this unfolding story. The weight of it is the first thing you feel as you reach back, a heavy silken cascade that has been bound tight through the night. In the Victorian world, a woman's hair is not merely a feature, it is her crowning glory, a sacred symbol of her femininity, her health, and her very modesty. To see a lady with her hair down is to see her in a state of ultimate vulnerability, a private site reserved only for the sanctuary of the bedroom or the intimacy of the marriage bed. As you undo the silk ribbons of your nighttime braid, the hair falls in a thick, undulating wave, reaching down past your waist, perhaps even to your knees. It feels cool and substantial against your skin, a living mantle that carries the faint, lingering scents of the night, rosemary, lavender, and the smoke of the dying fire. You pick up the heavy, silver-backed hairbrush once more. Its bristles are made of stiff boar hair, designed not just to detangle, but to polish. This is the centerpiece of the morning's labor, the 100 strokes. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic task that requires patience and a steady arm. As you draw the brush from the scalp to the very tips, you hear the soft, rhythmic hush-hush of the bristles against the strands. The static electricity begins to build, making the fine hairs dance and cling to the silver handle, a tiny crackling energy in the quiet room. This brushing is the Victorian version of a deep cleanse. In an era where a full wash with water and soap happens perhaps once a month, or even less frequently during the winter, the brush is the primary tool of hygiene. It distributes the natural oils, the sebum, from the scalp down the entire length of the hair, coating each strand in a protective, gleaming sheath. The idea of washing hair with water is viewed with a certain amount of trepidation. Water is thought to strip the hair of its vitality, to make it brittle, or worse, to cause a chill that could lead to a fatal bout of pneumonia. Instead, you practice the dry wash. You reach for a small bottle of diluted ammonia, or perhaps a mixture of brandy and egg whites, a concoction that smells sharp and medicinal. You dampen a sponge and meticulously dab at the roots, lifting away the dust of the London streets and the soot from the coal fires. For those with darker hair, a rinse of rosemary water is used to deepen the luster. For the fair-haired, a decoction of chamomile or even a diluted onion juice is thought to preserve the golden hue. The smells are a strange, earthy bouquet, herbal, pungent, and deeply organic. As you brush, you contemplate the sheer length of your tresses. To cut one's hair is a sign of deep mourning, a sacrifice made in the wake of a great loss, or a necessity born of a high fever, where the hair must be shorn to save the patient's life. For a healthy woman, the length is a point of pride and a measure of her status. It requires hours of maintenance, often performed by a lady's maid who stands behind you, her hands moving with the practiced grace of a weaver. But here, in the quiet of your own thoughts, you do it yourself, feeling the ache in your shoulders as a testament to your dedication to the ideal. But the Victorian silhouette demands more than just length. It demands volume. The natural hair, no matter how thick, is rarely enough to create the elaborate architectural updos required for social presentation. You reach into a small velvet-lined box on the dressing table and pull out a rat. This is a small, sausage-shaped pad made of fine mesh, or more commonly, of your own hair, gathered from your brush over the preceding months. It is a soft, tangled cushion that you will hide beneath your own locks to create the illusion of fullness. There is something hauntingly intimate about using your own shed hair to build your public image, a literal recycling of the self. You begin to section the hair, your fingers moving with a memory of their own. You place the rats at the crown and the sides, pinning them securely with long, dark iron hairpins that feel cold against your scalp. Then you wrap the natural hair over the pads, smoothing it down with a light application of pomade, perhaps a touch of macassar oil. This oil, imported from the East Indies and scented with young lung, is so ubiquitous that it has spawned the antimacassar, the small cloths pinned to the backs of chairs to prevent the grease from staining the upholstery. The oil gives your hair a deep, glass-like shine, catching the morning light in a way that suggests a life of pampered luxury. The construction continues. You might add a switch, a long, false braid of human hair purchased from a hair merchant, to create a complex coronet around the top of your head. The irony of Victorian modesty is never more apparent than here. While a woman is expected to be natural and virtuous, she is simultaneously expected to use false hair, pads and oils to achieve an impossible standard of natural beauty. You weave the braids together, securing them with tortoiseshell combs that glint like amber. The weight on your head increases. You feel your chin tilt upward, your neck elongating to support the heavy, beautiful burden. It is a physical manifestation of the era's constraints. To be beautiful is to be anchored, to be weighted down by the very things that define your grace. As you finish the style, you take a small hand mirror to inspect the back, ensuring not a single stray hair escapes the arrangement. The look is one of controlled, sculpted elegance. No hair is left to blow in the wind. Every strand is disciplined, smoothed, and pinned into place. This is the Victorian mind at work. The wildness of nature must be tamed by the hand of civilization. Your hair is no longer a wild mane. It is a piece of art, a structural element of your overall silhouette. The room is now quite bright, the sun having moved across the floor to illuminate the wardrobe. Your face is a porcelain mask. Your eyes are dark and wide, and your hair is a gleaming architectural crown. You stand up, feeling the new center of gravity that your hair has created. The transition from the private, loosened self of the night to the public, bound self of the day is almost complete. But there is one final, essential layer of engineering that remains. To truly inhabit the Victorian world, to move with the stiff, upright grace of a lady, the body itself must be reshaped. You turn toward the heavy wooden wardrobe and open the doors. Inside, hanging like a skeletal cage of silk and whalebone, is the corset. It waits for you in the shadows, the ultimate tool of Victorian discipline, ready to define your breath and your posture for the hours to come. The ritual of the crowning glory has prepared your mind and your face, but now, the very structure of your being is about to be transformed. You take a deep, full breath, perhaps the last one you will have for a while, and move toward the laces as the quiet morning continues its slow, rhythmic march toward the demands of the world outside. The wardrobe stands open now, a dark cavern of mahogany that holds the structural secrets of your identity. Inside, suspended from a padded hanger, is the corset, a garment that is less a piece of clothing and more a masterpiece of 19th century engineering. It is a pale, cream-colored contraption of heavy couture silk and sateen, reinforced with vertical channels that house the bones of the stay. In this light, the steel busk down the center front gleams with a cold, industrial silver, while the silk ribbons of the laces hang limp and long, like the trailing vines of some pale, subterranean plant. To look at it is to see the skeleton of the Victorian social order, rigid, unforgiving, and designed to mold the soft, unpredictable reality of the human form into a shape of idealized, geometric perfection. But before the corset can touch your skin, there is the ritual of the underlayers. You reach for the chemise, a simple, voluminous garment of the finest white linen or lawn. It is soft and breathable, smelling faintly of the sunlight that dried it on the line and the sprigs of dried lavender tucked into the linen press. You slip it over your head, the fabric cool and light as a cloud, falling in generous folds to just below your knees. This is the essential barrier, the shift, that protects the expensive, unwashable corset from the oils of your skin, and protects your skin from the harsh, abrasive friction of the whalebone. You smooth the linen over your hips, feeling the way it catches the air. A final moment of physical freedom before the architecture of the day is applied. You pull on your silk stockings, securing them with garters above the knee, and step into your drawers, split at the seam for practical reasons that remain unmentioned in polite society. Feeling the layers of white cotton begin to build the foundation of your silhouette. Now, you turn back to the corset. You take it in your hands, feeling its surprising weight. It is heavy, dense, with the baleen of the bowhead whale, strips of flexible, horn-like material that have been harvested from the depths of the ocean to provide the tension for your waist. You wrap the garment around your torso, the stiff fabric resisting the curve of your ribs. The first step is the fastening of the front busk, a row of steel loops and studs that click together with a series of sharp mechanical snaps. Click, click, click. Each one is a seal, a closing of the self. As the final stud is secured, you feel the initial embrace of the stays, a firm, unyielding pressure that immediately forces your spine into a state of unnatural, upright attention. You cannot slouch. The steel and whalebone forbid it. You are held in a vertical vice, a physical manifestation of the moral uprightness expected of your station. But the true work is in the laces at the back. You reach behind you, finding the long silk cords that crisscross through a double row of reinforced metal eyelets. In the quiet of the room, the sound of the laces sliding through the holes is a rhythmic, high-pitched zip-zip, like the sound of a violin string being tuned. Because you are dressing yourself this morning, You loop the extra long laces over the sturdy brass knob of the bedpost. You take a small step forward, using the weight of your own body to pull the cords taut. You feel the corset tighten. The fabric groans slightly, a low wooden creak of whalebone against silk, as the gap at the back begins to close. The sensation is one of profound containment. You feel the air in your lungs being pushed upward toward the collarbones. Your diaphragm, once free to expand with every deep breath, now encounters the stubborn resistance of the cutal. You learn, in this moment, the Victorian art of the thoracic breath, short, shallow inhalations that fill only the upper chambers of the chest. It is a delicate, fluttery way of breathing that contributes to the era's perception of women as fragile, excitable creatures, prone to the vapors or sudden fainting spells. But it is not a biological weakness. It is the inevitable result of being encased in a cage of silk and steel. You pull again, feeling the laces bite into the small of your back, cinching the waist and flaring the hips. The wasp waist begins to emerge in the mirror, a sharp, dramatic curve that defies the natural slouch of the human animal. This is the S-bend silhouette, an undulating line that pushes the bust forward and the hips back, creating a posture of perpetual, graceful readiness. You adjust the laces one final time, tying them in a secure double knot at the small of your back and tucking the long silken tails beneath the hem of the corset. The pressure is constant, a firm, heavy hug that never lets go. It is not necessarily painful, for you have been seasoning this corset for weeks, allowing the whalebone to warm and take the shape of your specific ribs. But it is a reminder of your boundaries. To be corseted is to be decent. A woman without her stays is loose, a word that carries both physical and moral weight. The corset is your armor, a shield against the perceived chaos of the natural body and the prying eyes of a judgmental world. As you stand there, your breath shallow and your posture perfect, you contemplate the history of this restriction. The medical journals of the day, the Lancet and the British Medical Journal, are filled with dire warnings about the evils of tight lacing. They speak of displaced livers, constricted lungs, and the atrophy of the abdominal muscles. They publish terrifying woodcut illustrations of rib cages crushed into the shape of an hourglass. And yet, the social pressure is stronger than the medical fear. To have a small waist is to demonstrate your discipline, your class, and your ability to endure. It is a sign that you do not perform manual labor. You are a creature of the parlor and the ballroom, a being whose primary function is to be an aesthetic ideal. You reach for a small, silver bottle of smelling salts on the vanity, lavender-scented ammonia, and tuck it into a hidden pocket. You know that by mid-afternoon, when the air in the drawing room grows thick and the tea is served, the restriction of the corset may become overwhelming. The salts are your lifeline, a sharp, stinging scent that can snap the mind back to clarity when the breath fails. You feel the cool metal of the bottle through the layers of linen, a secret comfort against the rigid wall of the stay. The transformation of the body is now complete. Beneath the porcelain skin, the dilated eyes, and the architectural crown of hair, there is now a structural core of iron and whalebone. You move toward the window, your gait different now, smaller, more measured steps, as the corset limits the swing of your hips. The light outside is a brilliant midday gold, and the sounds of London are a roar of progress. You look at your reflection one last time, seeing a silhouette that is entirely manufactured, a human being turned into an icon of 19th century grace. The room is filled with the scent of the morning's rituals, the metallic tang of the lead powder, the floral sweetness of the macassar oil, and the dry, starchy smell of the linen. You are a masterpiece of artifice, a living testament to the Victorian belief that nature is a raw material to be refined, polished, and bound. But as the sun warms the floorboards, you realize that the most visceral of the Victorian hygiene rituals is yet to come. For while you were clean on the surface and disciplined in your shape, the reality of the Victorian full bath remains a rare, laborious, and deeply mysterious event, a contrast to the daily sponge wash that reveals the era's true fear of the water. You turn away from the mirror, the silk of your skirts beginning to hiss against the floor as you prepare to descend into the house. The morning has been a journey of construction, a slow building of the mask and the cage. You feel the weight of the day ahead, but for now, you simply stand in the quiet, listening to the rhythmic, shallow sound of your own corseted breath, a soft and steady pulse in the heart of the Victorian silence. The world is waiting, and you are ready to meet it, encased in the beautiful, suffocating elegance of your own design. As you leave the room, the door clicking shut behind you, the mirror remains, holding the image of the empty washstand and the scattered tools of your transformation. The light shifts, the shadows lengthen, and the story of the Victorian body continues to unfold in the rhythmic, slow-moving currents of the past. We move now from the bedroom to the wider world, and to the strange, steaming rituals of the bath that lie hidden behind the heavy oak doors of the Victorian household, drifting deeper into the scents and sounds of an age that prized the surface above all else, while the reality beneath remained a world of shadows and steam. The transition from the bedroom to the bathing chamber is a journey from the dry, powdered world of the vanity into a realm of damp stones, rising mist, and the heavy, rhythmic thrum of copper pipes. In the mid-Victorian era, the full bath is not the casual, twice-daily convenience we know today. It is an event, a laborious, multi-stage operation that requires the coordination of an entire household. As you move through the dimly lit corridors, the scent of the house changes. The floral sweetness of the dressing room fades, replaced by the sharp, mineral tang of heating metal and the earthy, humid smell of boiling water. This is a ritual of the elite. For the common man or the laborer, a full immersion in water is a luxury beyond reach, a rare indulgence often reserved for the turn of the seasons or the onset of a wedding. You enter the bathing room, a space that feels distinct from the rest of the home. Here, the floors are often laid with cold, geometric tiles of slate or checkered marble, and the walls are clad in damp-resistant paper or dark varnished wood. In the center of the room stands the tub, a heavy, claw-footed vessel of cast iron lined with white porcelain, or perhaps a portable slipper bath made of gleaming, hammered copper. It sits there like a silent, waiting monument. For the Victorian, water is a powerful but dangerous element. There is a deep-seated medical anxiety surrounding the opening of the pores. The skin is viewed as a fragile barrier. To submerge the body in warm water is to invite the humours to escape and the miasmas of the city to enter. A bath is not merely a cleansing, it is a physiological gamble. The sound of the ritual begins in the kitchen, far below. You can hear the distant, rhythmic clatter of heavy iron kettles being filled at the pump and hoisted onto the coal-fired range. For a single full bath, gallons upon gallons of water must be brought to a rolling boil. Then comes the labor of the stairs. You listen to the heavy, measured footsteps of the housemaids as they ascend, their breath coming in short, rhythmic gasps under the weight of the steaming copper cans. One by one, they enter the room, the steam rising in thick, white plumes from the spouts. The sound of the boiling water hitting the cold bottom of the tub is a violent, resonant hiss, a sharp industrial roar that slowly mellows into a deep, bubbling churn as the basin fills. The heat in the room rises rapidly, turning the air into a thick, silken soup. The mirrors cloud over, turning your reflection into a grey, indistinct ghost. The windows bloom with condensation, the droplets tracing slow, erratic paths down the glass like tears. You stand in the center of this mist, the humidity beginning to soften the starch in your linen and the curl in your hair. To the Victorian mind, this steam is medicinal. It carries the sense of the bath additives, perhaps a handful of aromatic salts, a splash of pine needle extract, or a few drops of carbolic acid to ensure the water is pure. The smell is medicinal, sharp, and intensely clean, cutting through the heavy, stagnant air of the city. As the last can is emptied, the head housemaid tests the temperature with a wooden-cased thermometer. The Victorian tepid bath is the most recommended, roughly 85 to 92 degrees. Anything hotter is thought to relax the system to a point of dangerous vulnerability, leading to congestion of the brain or a sudden, fatal weakening of the heart. You watch as she adds a final bucket of cold water to temper the heat, the two temperatures swirling together in a visible, shimmering dance of thermals. The water is now a deep, still pool, reflecting the flickering gaslight of the wall sconces. The act of undressing in this humid sanctuary is a slow, rhythmic undoing of the morning's labor. You unlace the corset, the whalebone groaning as the tension is released, and feel the sudden, surging rush of blood back into your tissues. Your skin, marked with the red, geometric patterns of the stays, feels hypersensitive to the damp air. You step out of the heavy silk skirts and the layers of petticoats, leaving them in a soft, discarded heap on the mahogany chair. Finally, the chemise is lifted away. You stand for a moment in the mist, your body feeling strangely light and vulnerable without its armor. The Victorian body in the bath is a secret thing, a reality hidden beneath layers of social expectation, now exposed to the silence of the steaming room. You step into the tub, the transition from air to water, a sudden, enveloping shock. The porcelain is smooth and slick beneath your feet, and as you lower yourself, the water rises around your limbs with a soft, rhythmic lap against the metal sides. The sensation of weightlessness is profound. In this era of heavy fabrics and rigid structures, the bath is the only place where the body is allowed to forget the pull of gravity. You lean back against the sloped end of the slipper bath, the warm water closing over your shoulders. The silence of the room is now absolute, broken only by the occasional plink-plink, plink of a condensing droplet falling from the ceiling into the water. Hygiene in the bath is a methodical, almost clinical process. You reach for the soap, perhaps a bar of Knight's Primrose or a luxury cake of pears, and a long-handled brush with stiff, natural bristles. You begin at the neck and move downward, the rhythmic scrubbing creating a thin, milky lather that smells of rosemary and lye. Every inch of the skin is addressed with the same discipline applied to the morning vanity. You pay particular attention to the hands and feet, the extremities that are thought to be the primary conductors of health. The brush moves in slow, circular motions, stimulating the circulation and bringing a deep, crimson flush to the skin, the very glow that the morning powders were designed to mimic. But even here, in the luxury of the warm water, the fear of the chill remains. You do not linger. The Victorian bath is not a place for idle soaking or the reading of novels. It is a functional, timed operation. To stay in the water too long is to risk enervation. You feel the steam beginning to bead on your forehead, a sign that the body has reached its limit of heat. You reach for the bell pull, a heavy cord of twisted silk, and the signal is sent. The maids return with the warming towels, thick, heavy sheets of Turkish toweling that have been toasted before the fire until they are almost too hot to touch. The exit from the bath is a frantic, rhythmic race against the cooling air. You stand, the water cascading off your body with a heavy, rushing sound, and are immediately enveloped in the hot, abrasive embrace of the towels. You are rubbed dry with a vigor that borders on the aggressive, the friction designed to close the pores as quickly as possible and restore the vital heat to the surface of the skin. Your skin tingles, turning a vibrant, healthy pink under the rough toweling. You are then dusted with a fine, unscented talcum powder to absorb the last traces of moisture, the white dust blooming in the humid air like a tiny, localized blizzard. As you are bundled into a warm flannel dressing gown, you look back at the tub. The water is now grey and still, the heat dissipating into the stone floor. The ritual is over. You feel a sense of profound, internal cleanliness, a lightness of spirit that matches the lightness of the body. You have survived the gamble of the water, but as the maids begin the laborious process of emptying the tub, one bucket at a time, carrying the heavy wastewater down the back stairs, you realize that this purity is fleeting. The city of London, with its pea soup fogs, its soot-choked air, and its industrial grime, is waiting just outside the door. The scents of the bath, the pine, the carbolic, the toasted linen, begin to fade as you return to your dressing room. The porcelain mask must be reapplied, the hair must be repinned, and the corset must be laced once more. The full bath was a brief, steaming hiatus from the demands of Victorian life, a moment of raw physical truth in a world of artifice. You move back toward the vanity, the rhythmic hiss of your silk skirts returning, feeling the cool air of the corridors settling over your skin. The story of the morning has turned toward the afternoon, and the scents of the city are beginning to drift through the open casements, pulling you toward the next chapter of this long Victorian day. The gaslight flickers as a draft catches it, casting long, dancing shadows across the tiled floor. The mist is clearing, revealing the cold, hard lines of the room once more. You have been washed, scrubbed, and fortified. Now you must face the world that produced the need for such rituals in the first place, a world of extreme beauty and hidden filth, of floral perfumes and industrial stench. We step now from the sanctuary of the bath into the wider, more pungent reality of the Victorian streets, where the scent of the city becomes the next layer of our story, drifting deeper into the rhythmic, slow-moving currents of a bygone age. The heavy oak door of the house swings open with a slow, echoing thud, and for a moment you stand on the threshold, caught between two entirely different worlds. Behind you lies the sanctuary of the home, a place of polished mahogany, beeswax, and the delicate, fading scents of your morning rituals. Ahead of you lies the city of London, a sprawling, breathing leviathan of the 19th century. And the first thing that greets you is not a sight, but a wall of scent. It is a sensory assault that defines the Victorian experience more visceral than any photograph or painting could ever capture. The air outside is thick, a heavy, yellowish-grey curtain of pea soup fog that seems to cling to your skin like a damp wool blanket. As you step onto the limestone porch, the scent of the city rises to meet you in a rhythmic, undulating tide, a complex, layered symphony of progress, poverty, and the relentless pursuit of beauty. To understand the Victorian nose is to understand a society in a state of constant olfactory war. The primary note of the city is the smell of coal. It is everywhere, a sharp, sulphurous tang that coats the back of your throat and settles as a fine black grit on your white linen collar. Thousands of chimneys across the metropolis are breathing out the dark, acrid soul of the Industrial Revolution, creating a sky that is permanently bruised with soot. This smell is the scent of wealth and power, the very aroma of the empire's engine. Yet it is also a reminder of the suffocating reality of urban life. As you walk down the steps toward your waiting carriage, the coal smoke mingles with the damp, earthy smell of the Thames, a river that, in this era, is less a waterway and more a slow-moving open sewer. The memory of the Great Stink of 1858 still haunts the collective memory. A summer when the heat turned the river into a fermented sludge so pungent that Parliament had to be draped in sheets soaked in chloride of lime just to allow the ministers to breathe. But beneath the industrial roar of the coal and the river, there is the organic, rhythmic pulse of the street itself. You hear the clip-clop of iron shoes on the wet cobblestones, and with every hoofbeat, the smell of the horse rises into the mist. In a city of millions, there are hundreds of thousands of horses, each contributing to the thick, pungent aroma of manure and ammonia that defines the Victorian thoroughfare. It is a warm, steaming, and inescapable smell, mixing with the scent of wet straw and the greasy, metallic odor of carriage wheels. You reach into the pocket of your silk skirts and pull out a small, lace-bordered handkerchief. It has been meticulously prepared this morning, scented with a few drops of essence of lavender, or perhaps a delicate violet water. As you press the cool linen to your nose, the scent of the flowers acts as a fragile, aromatic shield, a thin line of defense against the overwhelming reality of the gutter. In the Victorian mind, smell is not merely a sensation. It is a matter of life and death. This is the age of miasma theory, the belief that diseases like cholera and typhoid are carried on the bad air itself. To smell something foul is to be in the presence of contagion. Therefore, the perfumes of the elite are not just for vanity. They are a form of portable, medicinal hygiene. You lean back against the leather cushions of the carriage, the scent of your handkerchief creating a small floral sanctuary in the cabin. The Victorian preference in perfume has shifted away from the heavy, animalistic musks of the previous century, the civet and ambergris of the Georgians, toward the monoflorals. The ideal lady should smell like a single, recognizable flower, a rose, a lily of the valley, or a sprig of lavender. These scents are seen as virtuous, simple, and clean, a reflection of the language of flowers that governs the social codes of the day. But even these delicate essences are the product of an intense, rhythmic labor. You think of the perfume houses in London and Paris, where thousands of pounds of rose petals are subjected to enfleurage, the slow, patient process of pressing flowers into layers of cold animal fat until the fat absorbs their very soul. It is a process that takes weeks of rhythmic turning and replacing, a quiet alchemy that transforms the raw beauty of the garden into a concentrated, oily absolute. As you sit in the carriage, the heat of your body warms the perfume on your wrists, releasing the scent in slow, rhythmic pulses. It is a fragile, fleeting beauty, much like the porcelain mask on your face, a temporary victory over the decay of the city. Beside you, on the seat, sits a small silver object that glints in the dim light filtering through the carriage window. This is your vinaigrette, a tiny, ornate box with a perforated inner lid. Inside, tucked beneath the silver grill, is a small sponge soaked in aromatic vinegar, a sharp, bracing concoction of acetic acid, camphor, and oils of cloves and cinnamon. In moments when the carriage passes through the more industrial districts, past the tanneries of Bermondsey, where the smell of rotting hides and dog dung lies thick enough to choke the breath, or past the soap boilers whose vats of boiling fat create a greasy, sickly sweet cloud. You reach for the vinaigrette, you open the lid, and the sharp, stinging scent of the vinegar cuts through the air like a blade. It clears the head, sharpens the nerves, and provides a sense of purity in a world that feels increasingly tainted. The carriage moves deeper into the heart of the city, and the smells become even more complex, more layered. You pass the flower girls on the corners, their baskets of damp violets and primroses, offering a brief, sweet counterpoint to the stench of the fishmongers and the butchers. You smell the hot, bready aroma of the bakeries, the roasted coffee from the high-end grocers, and the sharp, medicinal tang of the apothecaries. But always, in the background, there is the stink of the poor, a smell that the Victorian middle class views with a mix of pity and profound moral terror. The unwashed masses are defined by their scent, a mixture of stale sweat, damp rags, and the lack of that morning washstand ritual you so carefully performed. To the Victorian nose, poverty has a specific, rhythmic odor of stagnation, a contrast to the clean sense of the moving, progress-driven elite. The rhythm of the city is one of constant filtration. Every person you pass is engaged in their own olfactory battle. The gentleman in the top hat carries a cane with a silver knob filled with scented herbs. The crossing sweeper breathes through a ragged scarf to filter the dust. The very architecture of the city reflects this struggle. The new underground sewers of Joseph Bazalgette are a massive, hidden effort to pull the stench beneath the earth, to hide the reality of the body from the senses of the civilized world. You look out at the grand, stone facades of the buildings, their surfaces blackened by coal, and realize that the Victorian era is a giant, beautiful mask, a world of silk and stone designed to cover the steam and the muck. As the carriage slows to a halt before a grand residence, the smell of the city rushes back in through the opening door. The horse's breath is a visible mist in the air. The damp cobblestones shine like oil. You step out, your silk skirts hissing against the step, and the scent of your lavender perfume mingles one last time with the sulphur of the fog. You have moved through the city like a ghost, protected by your tinctures and your silver boxes, a being of the upper air. But the sensory fatigue is real. The constant effort of filtering the world, of maintaining the pure scent in the face of the industrial roar, is a labor that leaves the mind weary and the spirit longing for the silence of the evening. The sun is beginning to dip below the horizon, though it is barely visible through the thick amber haze. The gaslights are being lit, their rhythmic flickering creating halos of light in the fog. Each lamp brings with it the faint, sharp smell of coal gas, a dry, slightly sweet aroma that signals the coming of the night. You move toward the entrance of the house, the warmth from the hallway spilling out onto the pavement. The scent of the city is left behind, but it lingers in the fibers of your cloak and the edges of your hair. It is a reminder that no matter how many layers of lace and lead you apply, you are still a part of this breathing, steaming, and often overwhelming world. As you enter the house and the door clicks shut, the silence returns. The air is still, scented with the familiar beeswax and the lingering trace of the morning's lavender. The journey through the scents of the city has been a journey through the heart of the Victorian paradox, the constant dance between the ethereal and the industrial, the floral and the foul. You stand in the hallway, the rhythmic ticking of the clock the only sound, and feel the weight of the day beginning to lift. But the story of the Victorian body is not yet done, for as the men of this age step out into that same city, they carry their own rituals of grooming and presentation. The rise of the dandy, the sharp edge of the straight razor, and the strict codes of masculine presentation that mirror the feminine pursuit of the ideal. The shadows in the hallway lengthen, turning the mahogany to a deep, bruised purple. You move toward the stairs, your movements slow and rhythmic, the corset still holding you in its steady embrace. The scents of the street are a memory now, a dark and complex tapestry woven into the fabric of your day. We prepare now to shift our gaze from the lady's vanity to the gentleman's mirror, to the world of the Victorian man and the grooming rituals that defined his power and his place in the gaslit world. The story drifts forward into the barbershops and the dressing rooms of the elite, as the night begins to settle over the city of shadows and silk. The heavy, masculine silence of the gentleman's dressing room is a stark contrast to the floral powdered sanctuary of the lady's boudoir. Here, the air is thick with the scent of bay rum, sandalwood, and the sharp, metallic tang of cold steel. The light is more direct, less filtered by velvet, striking the dark mahogany of the washstand and the silver-topped crystal jars that house the secrets of the Victorian man. For the gentleman of the 1880s, grooming is not a matter of vanity, but a rigorous expression of character and class. To be well-groomed is to be disciplined. To be unkempt is to be morally suspect. The dandy, once a figure of flamboyant excess, has evolved into the serious gentleman, a man whose presentation is a study in restrained architectural precision. You stand before the shaving mirror, a heavy, swiveling glass that catches the grey London light. Your face, unlike the lady's, is not covered in lead powder, but it must be equally clean. The ritual begins with the preparation of the beard. In an era before the safety razor, the morning shave is a rhythmic, almost surgical operation. You reach for the shaving scuttle, a specialized ceramic vessel with a reservoir for hot water and a perforated tray for the soap. The soap is a hard, translucent puck of Williams or Pears, smelling of glycerin and rosemary. You take the badger hair brush, its bristles stiff and silver-tipped, and begin to work up a lather. The sound is a soft, rhythmic slosh-slosh in the ceramic bowl, a hypnotic churn that slowly transforms the hard soap into a thick, creamy mountain of white foam. You apply the lather to your face in broad, circular strokes. The heat of the brush opens the pores, while the soap softens the coarse hair of the beard. In the Victorian mind, the clean-shaven look is a mark of civilization, a way to distinguish oneself from the wild facial hair of the revolutionary or the laborer. However, this is also the age of the moustache movement. Following the Crimean War, where soldiers returned with thick, weather-beaten facial hair that was seen as a sign of rugged heroism, the moustache has become a mandatory accessory for the Victorian man of action. It is a symbol of virility and authority, a bridge between the military and the civilian world. But like everything else in this age, it must be strictly controlled. You reach for the straight razor, the cutthroat. Its handle is made of dark, polished horn or ivory, and the blade is a sliver of Sheffield steel, hollow ground, and honed to a terrifying, microscopic edge. Before the blade can touch your skin, there is the ritual of the strop. You take the long, supple strip of Russian leather hanging from the side of the washstand and begin the rhythmic flap, flap, flap of the blade across the surface. It is a sound of preparation, a sharpening of the nerves as much as the steel. You test the edge against your thumb. It is silent and hungry. The shave itself is a dance of extreme focus. You stretch the skin of your cheek taut with one hand, while the other guides the blade at a precise 30-degree angle. The sound is a crisp, rhythmic scritch as the steel shears through the stubble. There is no room for error. A single slip in the dim morning light can lead to a jagged, bloody reminder of one's clumsiness. You move the blade down the neck and along the jawline, leaving behind a trail of skin that is as smooth and pale as the marble of the basin. The Victorian man prizes this smoothness. It is a sign that he has the time, the steady hand, and the luxury of the mirror to maintain his appearance. Once the shave is complete, the focus shifts to the mustache. It must be sculpted. You reach for a small, silver tin of mustache wax, a stiff concoction of beeswax, lard, and bergamot oil. You take a tiny amount between your thumb and forefinger, warming it until it becomes a tacky golden resin. You apply it to the ends of the mustache, twisting and pulling the hair into a sharp horizontal line or a jaunty upward curl. This is the handlebar, a shape that requires constant maintenance throughout the day. To assist in this, the Victorian man uses a mustache cup, a teacup with a built-in ceramic bridge that protects the waxed hair from the steam and liquid of his morning Earl Grey. It is a physical manifestation of the era's commitment to form over function. The hair on the head is treated with equal discipline. Long hair on a man is seen as a sign of artistic looseness or political radicalism. The gentleman's cut is short, neat, and heavily lubricated. You reach for the bottle of Macassar oil or bay rum, a spicy, invigorating wash made from the leaves of the Pimenta acris plant and Caribbean rum. It smells of cloves, citrus, and a hint of the sea. You rub it into your scalp, the rhythmic friction bringing a healthy tingle to the skin, and then use two heavy, military-style brushes to smooth the hair flat against the skull. The part must be a straight, white line of scalp, as precise as a surveyor's mark. This plastered look is the masculine equivalent of the corset, a way to bind the natural wildness of the hair into a shape of absolute social order. As you finish with the hair, you turn to the final silent detail of the gentleman's grooming, the nails. In an era of industrial grime, clean fingernails are the ultimate signifier of class. A man with dirt beneath his nails is a man who works with his hands. A man with buffed, immaculate cuticles is a man who works with his mind. You use a small, ivory-handled file to shape the nails into a conservative almond curve. Then use a nail buffer, a pad of chamois leather, to polish them until they catch the light. It is a quiet, rhythmic task that underscores the Victorian belief that no detail is too small to be governed by the laws of propriety. The room is now filled with the mixed scents of the morning, the sharp alcohol of the bay rum, the waxy sweetness of the mustache balm, and the clean, alkaline smell of the shaving soap. You step back from the mirror, and the transformation is complete. You are no longer the rumpled, unformed creature of the night. You are a Victorian gentleman, a being of sharp lines and disciplined surfaces. You move toward the wardrobe to begin the long process of dressing. The starched collar that will limit the movement of your neck, the silk cravat that must be tied in a perfect four-in-hand knot, and the heavy wool frock coat that will define your silhouette. The morning has been a journey of subtraction and addition, subtracting the natural growth of the beard and adding the artificial discipline of the wax and the oil. You feel the weight of your own presentation, a sense of gravity that matches the heavy, ironclad world outside. But as you prepare to descend the stairs, you realize that the gentleman's ritual is not merely about the face and the hair. It is about the aura he carries into the world, a scent of tobacco, leather, and expensive soap that speaks of his power before he even utters a word. The city of London is now a roar of activity. The gaslights have been extinguished, and the sun is a pale, flickering disk in the coal smoke. You pick up your walking stick, a heavy piece of Malacca wood with a silver top, and feel the steady, rhythmic pulse of your own readiness. The Victorian man is a creature of the street, the club, and the office, and he moves through these spaces with a confidence born of his own meticulous construction. The story of the body has moved from the lady's porcelain mask to the gentleman's sharpened steel, revealing a society that values the polished self above all else. As you step out into the hallway, the house is alive with the sounds of the day. You hear the rustle of silk as the lady of the house descends the main staircase. Her corseted breath, a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the ticking of the grandfather clock. You meet in the hall two masterpieces of Victorian engineering, ready to face the prying eyes of the world together. The morning's rituals are over, and the long, slow dance of Victorian society is about to begin. We move now from the individual to the environment, into the darker, more toxic secrets of the Victorian home. A place where the very walls and fabrics carry a hidden, deadly price for the pursuit of the perfect aesthetic. The morning sun has climbed to its zenith, and the house is now flooded with a brilliance that reveals every texture of the Victorian interior. As you move through the drawing room, your eyes are drawn to the vibrant emerald green wallpaper that lines the walls, a pattern of intertwining vines and deep-veined leaves that seems to pulse with a lush, almost supernatural life. This is the Shields green, a color so intense and captivating that it has become the defining shade of the era's high fashion and interior design. In the flickering gaslight of the evening, this green glows with a jewel-like depth. But here, in the harsh clarity of the afternoon, it holds a secret that the Victorian family is only beginning to whisper about. The beauty of this green is literally a slow-acting poison. To achieve this specific, breathtaking hue, the paper hangers and the dressmakers of London use an inorganic compound, copper arsenite. The very walls you lean against, the very velvet of your favorite armchair, and the stunning shimmering fabric of the Paris green silk dress in your wardrobe are all impregnated with arsenic. As the damp London air interacts with the wallpaper, it triggers a chemical reaction, a slow, rhythmic release of arsenical dust and toxic gas into the still air of the room. You breathe it in with every shallow, corseted breath you take. It is a beauty that consumes from the inside out, a silent and invisible predator that turns the home, the ultimate Victorian sanctuary, into a site of slow, aesthetic decay. You reach out to touch the heavy lace trim of the curtains, the fabric feeling stiff and substantial beneath your fingertips. This lace, too, is a product of an era that prizes the ornate over the safe. Much of the old lace that gives the Victorian home its sense of history and gravitas is treated with lead-based whiteners to maintain its pristine virginal pallor. The dust from these fabrics, as they are brushed or moved by the wind, settles on the mahogany tables and into the carpets, creating a fine toxic film that covers the life of the family. The symptoms of this fashionable illness are as atmospheric as the rooms themselves: headaches, chronic fatigue, and a pale, sickly complexion that, ironically, mimics the very consumptive ideal so prized at the washstand. In the hallway, you pass a large, ornate mirror with a frame of gilded plaster. The gilding is beautiful, but the mercury used in the silvering of the glass and the lead in the paint of the frame are constant, silent companions. The Victorian home is a landscape of chemical alchemy. You think of the nursery, where the walls are often painted with vibrant lead-based pigments because they are durable and easy to clean. You think of the toys, the painted tin soldiers and the porcelain dolls that the children hold to their lips. Every element of this refined existence carries a hidden cost. The pursuit of the perfect color, the perfect texture, and the perfect white has led to a world where the very air is a mixture of coal smoke and chemical poison. The clothes in your wardrobe are perhaps the most intimate of these toxic vessels. You recall the sensation of wearing the green silk gown to a ball, the way the fabric hissed as you moved, the way the color made your eyes appear more dilated, more dark. But beneath the silk, the arsenic was reacting with the heat and moisture of your skin, causing painful weeping sores and a gradual systemic weakening. The dressmakers who sewed those gowns, the slaves of the needle who worked in the cramped, airless garrets of the East End, often died young, their hands stained a permanent sickly green, and their lungs ruined by the dust of the fabric. The porcelain mask you applied this morning is only the top layer of a much deeper, much more structural commitment to a beauty that is essentially lethal. Even the simple act of lighting a match to a gas sconce carries a risk. The coal gas that illuminates the Victorian night is often impure, releasing carbon monoxide and sulfur into the unventilated rooms. The gaslight creates a beautiful, flickering atmosphere that softens the lines of the face and hides the imperfections of the skin, but it also contributes to the vapors and the fainting spells that are so characteristic of the age. You stand in the center of the drawing room, listening to the rhythmic, low-frequency hiss of the gas pipes behind the walls, a sound that has become the heartbeat of the modern home. It is a sound of progress, but it is also a sound of slow, atmospheric contamination. The Victorian obsession with old lace and the antique is a reaction to this encroaching industrialism. You surround yourself with the ghosts of the past, the heavy furniture, the ancient portraits, the preserved flowers under glass bells, as a way to ground yourself in a world that feels increasingly unstable. But even these mementos are preserved with arsenic and mercury to prevent decay. The Victorian house is a museum of the dead, a place where the organic is chemically halted in its tracks. You look at the dried roses on the mantelpiece, their petals as brittle as paper, and realize that you too are a part of this preservation. You are being held in a state of static, beautiful suspension by your corset, your powders, and the very walls around you. The sun begins to cast long, dramatic shadows across the emerald wallpaper, turning the vines into dark, grasping fingers. The air feels heavy, expectant, and strangely sweet. You feel a slight dizziness, a familiar companion of the afternoon, and you reach for your smelling salts once more. The sharp sting of the ammonia cuts through the arsenical mist, bringing a momentary, painful clarity. You realize that the Victorian era is a period of transition, a bridge between the raw, organic past and the chemical, industrial future. It is a world that has mastered the art of the surface, but is still struggling to understand the consequences of the substances it uses to create that surface. As you move back toward the staircase, the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seems to grow louder, marking the slow, steady passage of time in this toxic paradise. The story of the Victorian body has been a story of extreme contrasts. The cold water of the washstand and the boiling steam of the bath, the delicate scent of lavender and the sulphurous roar of the city, the ethereal beauty of the porcelain skin and the lead-laden reality of the makeup kit. Now, as the afternoon begins to fade and the first shadows of the evening creep into the corners of the room, you feel the weight of these contradictions more than ever. The pursuit of the ideal is an exhausting labor. The constant filtering of the air, the constant management of the silhouette, and the constant exposure to the beautiful poisons have turned life into a delicate, high-stakes performance. You look at your hands, still pale and lily-white, and wonder how much of that color is health, and how much of it is the result of the lead and the arsenic. The Victorian world is a masterpiece of artifice, a place where the line between a beauty treatment and a slow death is so thin as to be invisible. The gaslights begin to flicker into life throughout the house, their rhythmic pop hiss signaling the arrival of the evening. The emerald green of the walls takes on a new, more sinister luster, and the lace of the curtains becomes a web of silver shadows. You descend the stairs, the silk of your skirts a soft, rhythmic whisper in the gathering dark. The story is nearing its conclusion. The day of the Victorian aesthetic is coming to an end, and as the lights grow dim and the world outside retreats into the fog, we prepare for the final reflection, the fading of the gaslight, and the legacy of these strange, haunting standards as they drift into the modern age. The house is now a place of shadows and flickering gold. You move toward the library, the scent of leather and old paper greeting you. The morning rituals, the city's roar, and the toxic secrets of the drawing room are all behind you now. You are a spectre of the 1880s, a being made of silk, lace, and history. As you sit in the deepening twilight, you feel the slow, rhythmic pull of the past, as the gaslight begins to fade and the Victorian world prepares to sleep, leaving behind a legacy of beauty that was as dangerous as it was unforgettable. The shadows of the drawing room have finally merged into a single, deep velvet darkness, and the house has settled into that heavy, expectant silence that only comes with the late Victorian night. Outside, the fog has thickened into a dense, opaque wall, swallowing the gas lamps of the street one by one, until the world beyond the window is nothing but a swirling, amber-tinted void. Inside, you move back toward the staircase, the rhythmic hiss of your silk skirts, now a tired, ghostly whisper against the carpet. The day's performance is nearing its end. The porcelain mask, the architectural hair, and the rigid cage of the corset have served their purpose, holding you in a state of disciplined grace through the scrutiny of the afternoon. But now, the gaslights in the hallway are being turned down by a silent, gloved hand, their flames shrinking into tiny, blue-hearted stars, and the private self begins to reclaim the body from the public icon. You return to your bedroom, the air here cooler now, scented with the dying embers of the hearth and the faint, lingering trail of the morning's lavender. The mirror in the corner waits for you, its silvered surface reflecting the dim, flickering light of a single candle. You sit before it, and for a moment you simply breathe. The shallow, fluttery breaths of the corseted chest, the rhythmic rise and fall of your lace-covered shoulders. You look at the face in the glass, the masterpiece of artifice you constructed so many hours ago. The lead powder is still there, though it has settled into a fine, matte grey in the shadows. The blue veins are still visible at your temples, and your eyes, though tired, are still dark and vast from the belladonna. It is a beautiful, haunting image, a portrait of an era that valued the ethereal over the biological, the static over the living. The dismantling begins with the hair. You reach back, your fingers finding the first of the heavy tortoise-shell combs and the cold iron hairpins that have anchored your crowning glory all day. As you pull them out, one by one, placing them with a rhythmic clink onto the marble vanity, you feel the weight of the day begin to shift. The braids are undone, the rats and hairpieces are removed and tucked back into their velvet boxes. And finally, the hair falls, a long, heavy curtain of silk that cascades over your shoulders and down your back. It feels wild and cool against your skin, a sudden, primal release from the sculpted discipline of the morning. You run your fingers through it, feeling the static crackle in the dry air, and the scent of macassar oil and coal smoke rises one last time before fading into the night. Then comes the unlacing. You stand and reach behind you, finding the silk cords of the corset. The sound of the laces sliding through the metal eyelets is a slow, rhythmic zip-zip, a reverse of the morning's tension. As you loosen the knot, you feel the corset expand, the whalebone groaning as the pressure on your ribs is finally released. It is a visceral, surging sensation, a rush of blood back into the tissues, a sudden, deep expansion of the lungs that feels almost overwhelming. You take your first full, belly-filling breath in 14 hours, the air reaching down into the very base of your spine. Your rib cage, so long held in its wasp waist mold, seems to sigh with relief. You step out of the silk skirts, the petticoats, and finally the corset itself, laying the heavy skeletal garment across the chair. Without its structure, your body feels strangely light, almost as if you might float away into the misty ceiling of the room. You move to the washstand, where a fresh pitcher of water has been placed. It is cold, colder than the morning, and the porcelain basin feels like ice beneath your hands. You take a clean flannel and begin to wash away the day. The white lead powder dissolves into a milky grey slurry. The crushed beetle rouge is wiped from your cheeks, and the lamp-black soot is lifted from your lashes. As the water clouds in the basin, the porcelain mask vanishes, revealing the raw, tired skin beneath. You see the faint shadows under your eyes that the belladonna could not hide, the slight sallowness of the skin that the arsenic was meant to cure, and the red, geometric indentations of the corset laces across your back and waist. This is the Victorian body in its truth. Fragile, marked by its efforts, and deeply, undeniably human. As you dry your face with a soft linen towel, you look out at the fading gaslight in the street and realize that you are standing at the end of more than just a day. The 19th century is beginning to tilt toward the 20th, and the world of shadows and silk is starting to dissolve. The very standards you've lived by today, the pursuit of the pale, the use of toxic minerals, the engineering of the silhouette, are about to be challenged by a new age of science and discovery. The miasma that you feared in the city air will soon be revealed as germs. The consumptive look will lose its romantic allure as the reality of bacteria is understood, and the heavy, restrictive fabrics of your wardrobe will give way to the freer, more athletic lines of a new century. The era of the porcelain ideal was a beautiful, desperate attempt to create order in a world of industrial chaos. It was a commitment to the surface, a belief that by polishing the exterior, one could refine the soul. But the price was high, paid in lead poisoning, in constricted lungs, and in a constant rhythmic struggle against the natural self. As the 20th century dawns, the definition of hygiene will shift from moral cleanliness to biological health. The pale skin of the elite, once a sign of leisure and status, will eventually be replaced by the tanned skin of the traveler, as the sun moves from a mark of labor to a mark of health. The belladonna will be returned to the apothecary's shelf, and the Paris green will be stripped from the walls as the deadly secrets of arsenic are finally laid bare. But for tonight, the Victorian world remains. You slip into your nightgown, a simple, flowing garment of white cotton that feels like a whisper against your skin, and move toward the bed. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn tight against the London fog, and the hearth has faded to a soft, pulsing orange glow. You climb into the high, feathered mattress, the linens feeling cool and crisp, smelling of the lavender you applied so long ago. The rhythm of the house has slowed to a heartbeat. You can hear the distant, muffled clip-clop of a single horse on the cobblestones, the last traveler of the night, and then silence. The gaslight in the hallway is finally extinguished, and the room falls into a deep, velvety dark. You lie there, your hair spread like a dark fan across the pillow, your breath now slow, steady, and deep. The morning mist of part 1 seems like a lifetime ago, a distant memory of a world that was constructed and then dismantled in the space of a single day. You have been a lady of the 19th century, a spectre of elegance, a masterpiece of artifice. And now, you are simply a person drifting towards sleep in the heart of a disappearing age. The shadows of the Victorian era are long and deep, filled with the scents of rosewater and coal, the sounds of silk and iron, and the haunting, beautiful pursuit of an impossible perfection. As you close your eyes, the images of the day flicker like a magic lantern show. The glint of the silver brush, the curve of the emerald wallpaper, the dark, dilated eyes in the mirror. They are the ghosts of a time that prized the dream over the reality, the mask over the face. But the dream is fading now, and the night is yours. The world outside continues its slow, rhythmic turn toward the future. But here, in the sanctuary of the velvet curtains, time has stopped. The fog presses against the glass, a silent witness to the passing of an age. You feel the weight of the blankets, the softness of the pillow, and the slow, rhythmic pulse of your own heart. The story of the Victorian body is finished. The secrets are kept, and the beauty remains, a soft and haunting echo in the quiet dark. Sleep now, as the gaslight fades, and let the rhythmic currents of the past carry you away, into the deep and silent amber of the night, where the porcelain mask is forgotten, and the spirit is finally, beautifully free. The last ember in the hearth pops softly and turns to ash. The city is silent. The Victorian day is done. Sleep. Sleep in the shadows of the silk. Sleep in the quiet of the fading light. The world of tomorrow is waiting, but for now, there is only the peace of the long, rhythmic night.